Welcome to another broadcast of Philosophic Perspectives on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. And now out to your host, it's Arthur D. Schwartz.
Why, hello everybody, welcome back. Well, today's show is going to be a little bit different. The title of today's show is Welcome to ArtistFirst Radio. So that's what I think, I don't know, we might have done this, a show like this in the past, I'm not exactly sure. But what I want to do is, talk about some of my interests, but there's other shows on the ArtistFirst Radio Network, which are really great, really interesting, serious and funny. And so I thought what I would do is talk about some of my interests and how they intersect with other shows on the network. And, of course, Scott, a.k.a. Z-Man, is going to be my sidekick today, once again. And because no one knows more about these shows accepting the hosts themselves than Scott. In fact, Scott is. Scott, are you? I know you stand in. Like your rancher, are you the host of that, or do you have a co-host?
I consider myself the co-host on that show. Michael in Maui is the star. I'm like the Ed McMahon. He's the Johnny Carson.
Okay, but you're on the air a lot.
I do music specials, done about 15,000 of them since '96. Just finished one with a band from Denmark.
Oh, great.
They stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning to do that show. Oh, geez.
There's a lot of interesting shows. One, you have actually it's broadcast live from Kenya, right? Kenya, Africa.
Africa Creates, yes, comes from Nairobi. In Nairobi, Kenya. And we might talk a little bit about that one as well. But where I'm coming from here specifically is I've talked a lot about my book, as I've mentioned many times, and my book is sort of how I got into doing this radio show. While I was trying to promote my book, I was looking for a radio spot to wanted to get some interviews. And then I came across ArtistFirst Radio, and before you know it, I got my own show. And so that's the way that kind of started. And my book is, about philosophy and, issues, either strict philosophy or as they relate to, society, politics, and, personal issues, everything. But also, I have the issue of alternative philosophy, or alternative subjects such as parapsychology, or UFOs, or suppressed inventions and alternative technology, and things of that nature, mysticism and spirituality as well. Those aren't really in the forefront of my book, although I do go into it. I think it's important. It is an important part of it, but probably only account for maybe 15% of my book. But on the ArtistFirst Radio Network, there's several shows that make it, it's really a centerpiece. And so the idea here is I'm trying to create some networking here, you might say, in the ArtistFirst Radio Network. It's also an opportunity I really enjoy and appreciate being on ArtistFirst Network, and it's an opportunity to, at least during this show, to promote other great shows that are on the network. And of course, there's no one better than Scott here for me to bring in and to talk about it. And I think the way, we'll do it one at a time. I made a list of some shows I wanted to talk about today. I will first mention Authors First with Tony Kaye. He's on, I think, pretty much every day, right, at some point during his schedule? Yeah, that show runs daily. They're not all live original shows, but it airs actually 7 days a week.
Right. So, and that's that was my first introduction to ArtistFirst Radio.
And so, yeah, I want to, give a shout out to Tony Kaye and ArtistFirst. And so it's a great show. He has brings in, a lot of authors. He's interviewed a lot of authors, and so it's a really fun program as well. So I hope you tune in. But there's I want to get now down to some of these specific areas that I'm interested in. I don't consider myself to be an expert, but I'm fascinated by it, and it actually, in some ways, defines my interest, even though I'm not expert. It has to do with alternative thinking, and that's what my work really is all about. I mean, it's thinking outside the box. And so conspiracy theories, when taken, in moderation, and alternative science and parapsychology, I believe very much it's considered to be alternative, a way of looking at the world, but I also think there's a tremendous amount of merit in much of it. And so so looking at the shows on the network, I've come up with those two that I think I want to engage now Scott, and he can maybe give a description of each one of them, and they are interconnected because it does deal with the subject of aliens and UFOs. So Project Urantia, which is the show that Scott does sort of is the co-host, as you will, of that show, and that is concerned with alien visitations, right, and a spiritual connection with these beings from another world. Correct, Scott?
Yes.
So why don't you go into detail about this?
Well, the word Urantia comes from celestial language. That's the word the Celestials use for Earth. Earth is a man-made name. They call us Urantia. There is a book called the Urantia Book. I am studying it, been studying it for the last several years. It's about as thick as your arm. And it is supposedly written by people not of this planet. The premise of the broadcast is that celestial beings have been visiting and shepherding this planet. The universe is full of life, and there's a huge religious component to the Urantia book and the Urantia show. The Celestials, well, some of the listeners might remember Riley Martin. He's really the foundation of this show. A number of citizens were abducted by friendly aliens back in the 50s and 60s and 70s and taken to a ship off the rings of Saturn, which, by the way, another picture of it was just taken about a month ago and has appeared on the internet. Riley Martin, the show was so successful that Riley Martin was picked up by Howard Stern, and he spent from 2008 until he died in December of 2015 as a show on Howard Stern's Channel 101. The show was wildly successful, and when he left us at ArtistFirst, we brought on Michael from Maui. Michael and Riley and Nancy Leader and another gentleman were all on the craft at the same time. We've corroborated this. They've all admitted meeting each other there, and all their stories are exactly the same. And that's the premise of the program. We're not alone. We've never been alone. And this is reality TV for Celestials, the Earth. There's nothing like it out there. We are one of the most screwed up planets. I'm not joking. All kidding aside. And there's some historical evidence to what I'm saying there.
Well, we are screwed up. I mean, there's no question about that.
All through recorded history, way back as long as we have etchings and carvings and paintings from lost civilizations and all the centuries that we do have artwork from, there's constantly references to, for lack of a better word, flying saucers that appear off of battlefields, all the way through the wars currently fighting today, because wars are not as common around in our galaxy as they are on Earth, and the Celestials come to watch this barbaric planet fight among ourselves, and we spend a large majority of our time as human beings trying to kill other human beings.
anyway, that's without getting too deep into that.
It sounds a little bit like in the old, before the 20th century, when warfare was, basically restricted to a battlefield, like in the Civil War, and the people in the towns would go up on the hills and watch the battle.
Yeah, have a picnic while the people slaughtered each other in front of their eyes.
But it kind of sounds like what the aliens are doing.
Exactly.
So what does it say about them?
Right, we're reality TV, man. And
well, I know, but I mean, it's a little bit depressing that these enlightened aliens are like reality TV.
Well, there's bajillions of alien races out there. Many of them are not very friendly. Many of them would like to wipe out every human being. Some are very nice. Some have been actually keep protecting us from other bad boys out there. There are many, many, many planets, countless planets across our galaxy that are populated by what we would call humanoids. 1 head, 2 arms, 2 feet, etc. Different flavors. Right. But, they're not all friendly.
Right.
But we luckily, without, you may not know it, listeners, but there's a group of celestial beings that are actually watching out for us. That's the premise of the broadcast. Mm-hmm. Believe what you want. It's
well, I hope so, because we certainly need that. Because the way we're going right now, we're going to need that.
Well, one last point on this show before we move to the next one. Nancy Leader was on the mothership when she was separated from Riley and Michael and the other gentleman. When they brought her back, she was in a near catatonic state, and they freaked out. They thought that the Celestials had done something to her. But and I guess they had implanted in her brain certain things that they would be able to allow her to recall as they wanted her to. So she's, for the last 20 years, you guys might know her, the Zeta Talk, folks. Zeta Talk is her website. You can go there. She's quite famous in the UFO world. She is predicting that the planet Nibiru, it's actually a small solar system, is probably the dwarf star companion to our sun, is coming around again. This is the same solar system.
Well, she's been saying that for quite a few years now.
Yes, she has. And but the latest information she's putting out is that it's, first of all, you folks, you can see it in many parts of the world. You can see this with your naked eye. It's sunset and sunrise. But she says that this is coming by. It comes by every 3,600 years or so, and when it does, the gravitational stresses on the Earth cause much catastrophe. You can read about it in the Colburn Bible, which was written in ancient times. The Egyptians thought the Colburn Bible was ancient literature, and they included it in their texts. But anyway, the bottom line is Nancy thinks that perhaps 2/3 of humanity might disappear before the end of next year. Oops.
Because of Planet X?
Right. Planet X is technically is a generic term for Nibiru, which is really it's really 5 planets. It's a small dwarf star that has 4 other small bodies circulating around it. It was, if you read the ancient Sumerian texts, all the translated clay tablets from Sitchin, all their carvings, they show this little system. I mean, it's repeated in their sculptures thousands of times, and it's called the Nemesis, the Destroyer. And they write about it. Right. They've left us. People in the past, we think they're crazy because they talk about things that don't make sense to us in the modern age. You know what? I don't think they were crazy. I think they were trying to leave something for future generations to warn them.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Right. The destruction would be, the gravitational effects, right? Of that large gravitational field.
Yes, she's predicting that the sea levels will rise, that perhaps 100 feet, 200 feet, which means, 1/3 of all the world's population lives within 100 miles of a shoreline. We're talking the Mississippi River becoming an inland sea, dividing the country in half.
You're talking about massive earthquakes and all that stuff. It would wreak havoc. You and I were talking. The show I did on February 3rd, 2016, to February 3rd of this year. Half the show I devoted to or most of it, I devoted to the subject of this Planet X that has been
that the very esteemed scientists from Caltech, two very esteemed scientists, I don't have their names right in front of me, but it's easy to find, and they discovered a planet X, which is very much like this. The only thing is, instead of every 3,600 years, it's like every something like 15,000 years, I think. That's incredible. So they're not talking about the same thing, but the fact that what they're finding is actually even more extraordinary, astronomically speaking, because the scientists would poo-poo the whole idea of a planet circling our sun once every 3,500 years. It would seem impossible to do because of the gravitational effect, I would imagine, between bodies, traveling that distance away from the sun. But now they come up with a planet that it takes 15,000 years, roughly. I forget. It's something like that to circle the sun. That's even more extraordinary, right? Because it's going so far out of the gravity, or into space, away from the sun, that it's hard to imagine the gravitational force of the sun being able to keep that body in its orbit. So, that's right. I think it's even more amazing because while what they came up with may not point to Nibiru and that particular story that Sitchin talks about that's preserved in the Sumerian text tablets, but astronomically, if the scientists today they think they found a body that circulates like every 15,000. I forget 13,000, 14,000, but something in that order, and that just blows my mind. Because if that is possible, certainly Nibiru is possible.
Well, and
right?
remember, when you look at a galaxy, it's flat. It's like a dinner plate. Everything. It's called an ecliptic plane, I believe, is the terminology. Everything's on the same plane. Uh-huh. But these things that you're discussing, and the Nibiru system, they're on a huge tangent, on about an 80-degree angle. It goes way, instead of staying flat, it goes way up there at an angle, way out in space, and comes back, and it's at this, this tilted angle of 80 degrees almost that it comes in. It's and remember, folks, in our galaxy, as we've studied it, it is the most common situation is two suns. That is the most common systems in I think 60 or 70%. Are binary star systems where there are two companion suns. So us only having one sun is I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's in a minority. So maybe we don't have only one sun.
Right. Scott, do you have any idea of, let's say, Pluto is no longer considered a planet, but let's say take the celestial body Pluto. How many Earth years does it take Pluto to evolve around the sun? Would you by any chance know
I don't know that offhand, but when you mentioned Planet X a few minutes ago, that's some people will use that terminology to describe, and this is actually very contemporary, clear back as far as Percival Lowell, one of the famous founding fathers of astronomy. They could tell that the planets on the outer reaches of our solar system were being perturbed. Their orbits weren't normal. Something was out there, and so that's where another one of the Planet X ideas came up. In fact, that was one of Lowell's reasons for building his observatory, was he was going to find that planet. Now, I thought I just saw something on CNN as a little snippet story where they found a couple more planets out there that are beyond Pluto, and they're worried that they're going to, And anyway, some people, when they say Planet X, that's what they're talking about, a single body that's part of our solar system and not the Nibiru system. But those words can get sort of interchanged in these discussions.
Well, right. I think, by the way, I just looked it up. It takes Pluto 248 years to orbit the sun. So that's pretty interesting. It's not Nibiru, which was 3,500 years, but still 248 years is a long time. So I didn't actually realize that. So, but I think what we're really talking about is it's becoming more and more believable that something extraordinary along the lines of what Sitchin was talking about, it's becoming more and more believable, plausible to some degree, I think, because like I said, these are two extremely highly regarded astronomers from Caltech. So you don't get any more, you don't get much more credible than that in the scientific circles. So it's pretty interesting. I had a question though about your the aliens on your ranch show, on the show. Do all civilizations go through a silly or a violent stage like us Earthlings, or do some races somehow skip that part?
Well, there's different competing theories about that. Many planets are colonized. The idea that lightning struck a mud puddle millions of years ago and developed into modern man is kind of ridiculous. The Celestials say that humanoids were brought to this planet. And the Sumerians say that when they got here, when the Anunnaki got here, they took the apes, the Cro-Magnon, they took some of these species and they genetically altered them to make them better slaves to help them mine gold. I'm not. What was your question again? I didn't mean to digress like that.
No,
the history.
In other words, I'm going back to they come here to watch the circus act that we are for them, entertainment maybe.
Well,
but I mean, my question is, these beings who are watching us, did they go through their own phase, or they somehow in their evolutionary cycle they kind of skipped the murderous phase that we've always been a part of our race?
Well, the like I say, there's good guys and bad guys. The good guys say that this was a colonized planet. It was actually like a prison planet. That sounds like the Alex Jones there, but
like Australia.
But in some planets there aren't many races of people. There's only one or two races, and so a lot less conflict. But the general idea is.
Well, you're talking about races. I don't mean I'm not. Are you talking about like races in the human species, like black and white or something?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
No. I don't. I'm not. I'm talking about the human race.
Well,
the human race. In other words, I wasn't talking. No, that's no. I want to be clear. I wasn't referring to that. I mean the human race. I mean, honestly, races are they're just words. We're just one race.
No, but that's not necessary. That I want to be homogenous with everyone, and I welcome and love every human being. But what I'm saying to you is that it's rare to have planets like ours that are developing. Some of these guys talk about levels of what do I call it? Evolution, and we're a level 0 planet. We haven't evolved into realizing where we are in the universe. There's level 0 through 10. 10 being you'll become a being of light. That's the plan. Kind of like what the Hindus talk about in the levels of nirvana, right? Probably the Hindu religion has a lot of it right. Oddly enough, a lot of what they
But you know what? But the thing is, we humans don't require. I mean, while there is a racial strife, obviously, we don't really require that. I mean, look at Europe up until the 20th century. I mean, they were continually fighting each other. They were the same race. So they were Caucasian. So the thing is, humans, do fight over race. They fight over religion. They fight over money. We fight over everything. So you don't really need the various whatever. I mean, a lot of biologists would say there's no such thing as a race, really, because. Because it's the same genome. I mean, it's slight variation, but there's more variations within one race, so-called, than there are between races. But anyway, I just want to make the point that we don't need this antiquated term race. We don't need that to explain our violence, because, like I said, just look at the Europeans. Look at the American Civil War. I mean, yes, there was race part of that, but that's not why we really had a Civil War. I think we would have had the Civil War. Well, I mean, the slaves were part of the division
right, that maybe we wouldn't have a civil war, but it wasn't about race. It was about money. It was about the fact that the Southern slaveholders, slavery was the central part of their economy. So it wasn't really about race per se. It was really about money, right? Don't you agree?
Yeah, I guess some planets, and we're talking hundreds of billions just in our own galaxy. Some planets go through completely normal. Normal's the wrong word. Go through very peaceful evolution, and they don't have massive wars. They don't kill everybody off. Other histories of other planets, like the Beovians, they completely destroyed one of their planets. The entire had to move to, and then there's accidents that happen with science. It's pretty much when you have hundreds of millions or billions of planets, you have about every combination of good and bad that goes on. A big overview of that the Celestials tell us is that there is a creator. You can start splitting hairs about religion of which one follows, but there is a creator. There, at least in our galaxy, there was a fight basically between good and evil. The Bible would pick that up and say Satan or Lucifer and the beings of light, and that is a very oversimplified historical record that happened millions of years ago, over millions of years, and it's over. But we are on the outskirts of the end of this struggle. And one more point, that arrogant human beings find it difficult to believe that there are beings of extremely high intelligence, way beyond our intelligence, that look like bugs, that look like a praying mantis, or look like an octopus, or look like a puff of smoke. We think that it can't. If a being looks like a praying mantis, they certainly can't build spaceships and fly around the galaxy. Well, why not?
Right. Well, you're right. I'm going to be very ignorant. Not ignorant. I'm going to be very prejudiced. In a sense that, yes, I totally understand. I think it is possible there could be praying mantises that are intelligent aliens and so forth and so on. However, personally, I am skeptical because there is in evolution a kind of convergence. For example, I believe someone told me that there is a cat-like animal in South America. It's very much like a feline cat. Looks very much in the whole shebang. But it actually is not. It's a totally different evolutionary. It's a totally different species, totally different family, and they're not related through evolution. I mean, they're related in terms of the world. So they're not. They don't share the same line. That they didn't descend from the same line. So what I'm getting at is, in my mind, I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. I think I may be biased that, in fact, that all intelligent life may be humanoid. I'm not hard. I'm not saying I'm absolutely strongly disposed towards that view, but I do think it's possible that evolution does follow a certain path inevitably. And so while they wouldn't look exactly like us, obviously, I'm sure they would look extremely strange in some cases. If the fact that if they were all humanoid and human-like, and that they wouldn't be insectoid or even reptilian. I mean, I know a lot of people think I think you yourself might think there are already reptilians here. So I don't really know that. I know it's a common belief, but I'm just giving you my predisposition that I think it's possible that the humanoid is just part of the end result of evolution, no matter where it is. Having said that, I quite I quite allow. I mean, that I could be totally wrong. I mean, I'm saying that, but I just think it is possible that the humanoid form could be an inevitable result of evolution or post-human. I mean, we're going to go through a post-human phase too. So, humanoid or post-humanoid. You know what I'm trying to say? Because I don't think our evolution. We're about ready to enter we're going to become the creators of our own post-human evolution, right? Through technology and genetic engineering and so forth. I just started a book I'm going to actually discuss on my social philosophizers meeting coming up on Friday. We'll break up to several sections, but I heard it on on the PBS radio station here in Boston, and it's called *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind* by Yuval Noah Harari. And I think from what I can tell, I'm really just starting the book. It kind of addresses the very topics that we're talking about right now. It's about evolution and going into the future, into our post-evolution, you might say. Scott, I want to bring up another show right now. I just want to talk a little bit about it. Then I want to take a break. Okay, but what I want to do is talk about Pyramids on Mars with Kevin Estrella. Did I pronounce his name right?
Yes, you did.
Kevin Estrella.
Yes.
It's called Pyramid. I'm sorry to interrupt to change the topic so abruptly, but I just want to kind of touch a few points. So Pyramids on Mars with Kevin Estrella, and this is mostly about UFOs, right?
Kevin is a musician in Ontario, Canada, who was visited by celestial beings. Okay.
Now, his show is the first Tuesday of each month.
Yes.
At what time?
11 p.m. Eastern.
11 p.m. Eastern. And also Project Urantha is every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
At 9 p.m. Eastern, right.
And also rebroadcast, shows rebroadcast every night at 1 a.m.
Yeah, that's correct.
Encore broadcast. Okay. So what I want to do is talk a little bit. I want you to talk a little bit about Pyramids on Mars and Kevin Estrella's right? Estrella?
Yes.
Kevin Estrella's show. And then I want you to play this very interesting ad that he has on. And then what you can do is play that ad and let that run and then go into my ad, okay?
All right, I'm going to set this up so that happens.
What's that?
I'm going to try to set this up so that happens without me having to do anything else. Give me a second.
I'll just talk for a while, and you do what you need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated with UFOs. I mean, I'm so fascinated with UFOs. And because of just the nature of it, how amazing it actually is, if true, and I believe they are, or at least some of them are. But also, once again, it's a paradigm for the things that I think are most important is that the limitations of the way we think, that it's so easy to dismiss UFOs. I mean, you can see it even now when it seems like becoming more and more acceptable. You have when there's a UFO sighting and the TV station picks it up, and there's always that laughter. Oh yeah, just sort of making fun of it, not taking it seriously at all. And it's because we just live in these shells. These shells are the paradigms. These shells are this tunnel vision. These shells are the small-mindedness that everything is as it seems, when, in fact, in many respects, everything is not what it seems. I mean, literally true, right? I mean, literally, the world you see around you is not what it appears to be because it's mostly space. Your desk, your chair, your tables, your homes, your bodies are mostly space. But we don't see it that way. Of course, we see it as so-called solid objects. Are you there,
yep.
Scott?
Well, okay. If I would just add that
yeah.
The Celestials teach us that it's frequencies of vibration
right.
that create matter. And if you change the vibration of that matter, you can pass a brick through a solid wall if it's a different frequency.
Right. And so just get to my point, it's like, the world is not what it seems. So, and that's just the thing. We are so comfortable, and it's understandable. I mean, it's just the way the world is, but still, I just wish people can open their minds a little bit, and which, by the way, is not because you can see things that are out of the ordinary and you accept as a positive. It doesn't mean that it has to be a whack job. It doesn't mean you have to just say idiotic things, or it means you have to actually look at something and say it's wrong, like a certain political figure we have, which I talk enough about him. So, but just as an aside, and saying ridiculous, stupid, moronic things. No, I mean, you don't have to. It doesn't mean that you can't be conventional or accept our norms and have a sense of how we are living in a universe that's far, 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 far more mysterious than we can imagine. And I don't think there's any contradiction there. I mean, we all have to get up in the morning, we have to get dressed and go to work and do, blah, 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 blah. And maybe we don't really die, but still, we may not die. We may live forever after we die. But you know what? The idea of life and death is pretty much the way we have to look at it. That is, on our planet Earth, that's why we have spirituality, so we can, realize, well, maybe it continues. Maybe this is just this is just one path, one dimension, one frequency. But that doesn't mean you can say whether, there is such a thing as life and death, even though maybe not, but still there is. It is and it isn't, perhaps. Does that make any sense?
Well, we believe, and we've been taught that, yes, that reincarnation exists. Similar to the Hindu beliefs that if you're that you are the purpose of life is to evolve. Those beings of light that told Michael the purpose of life is to become like we are, beings of light. And it could take thousands or millions of lifetimes.
Right.
And you are reborn, and and some people, there is a way to get off the wheel of reincarnation. Some people opt out and they just cease to exist. It's not for everybody.
Oh, they can opt. You don't have to have nirvana. You can just opt out.
Well, some people don't seem to progress farther, and they at some point in time they just say screw it. It's kind of like dropping out of high school. Screw it. I'm not coming anymore. And they just go into non-existence.
Can they ever get back on the wheel, or they're permanently?
No,
they're off.
And it's their own choice.
I'll have to keep that in mind.
That's interesting. Some of these beings, like the Biavians, they can reincarnate, or not reincarnate, but they have technology to keep themselves alive for tens of thousands of years. And we asked them one time, well, how long is the longest Biavian lived? And they thought it was around 40,000 years. And they said at that time, they said, man, I've done everything. I've been everywhere. I've lived for 40,000 years. Enough's enough. Can you think of that? I mean, if you were immortal, would there be a time limit? Well, for the Biavian race, it must be less than 40,000 years.
Wow. I mean, it is, a question, imagine living, 1,000 years, about 10, forever. I mean, it's hard to imagine, wanting to do that in a way, right? Just imagine the sense of every day you basically live forever, for all practical intents and purposes. Of course, 40,000 years is nowhere near ever, but in the human context, it's forever, right?
Well, I always like to remind people, if you cease to exist, if you die and you cease to exist, you're not going to be aware of that. You're not going to be able to contemplate that reality because you don't exist anymore. So even if that's maybe cheating the definition, but you always exist, right? Because if you don't exist anymore, you're not going to know it anyway.
Right now, so I think I think I'm on to miss something. We shouldn't go back. What I'd like you to do is why don't you just talk a little bit about pyramids on Mars, Kevin Estrella's show. It sounds like it's really interesting, and then you can go into that piece right, we talked about.
Right.
Very funny. And then you can do, if you can, I know we're just, Scott, if you can, I'm going to change because we're already getting, the program is not going to be going on too much longer. So if you can just run the other ad also.
Gotcha.
So run the two together.
They're ready to go.
Okay, so you have Kevin's, and you'll have his thing, and then you'll have my two and whatever else you want to put in there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Kevin's a newbie to the UFO community. In the summer of 2014, I believe it is, he is outside somewhere in rural Ontario, and he sees a large craft fly over, and he feels that there's some connection there. He feels something, subliminally or in his mind, he feels that they're contacting him. Now, this was all through his mind. Now, the UFO sighting was investigated by MUFON, the reputable MUFON organization, and deemed to be an actual sighting, and in their opinion was confirmed as a real UFO happening. But what happened to Kevin is he's a guitar player, and they contacted him and said, we want you to start putting out music that is in the frequency of 432 hertz. The modern scales of Western music, the key of A is 440. Now that's the cycles per second, right? When you talk about frequencies, the A440 is what everybody listens to. 432 kilohertz, or hertz rather, hertz, is a way to reach people on a different level. So consequently, he's been doing this. He's been putting out music and albums and stuff on their direction at a different frequency level to try and change the consciousness. He's had some great guests on. I think we're only into his 5th or 6th program. His last show was a reptilian alien human hybrid. You should listen to that. I know, that's what I thought too when I first heard that was who he's going to have on. And then I listened to the show, and my opinion was greatly different when the show was over.
Right.
But that's Kevin, and here we'll let you. You can go get those archives, folks, when this is over. So let's run this ad. It's very cleverly done, and then we'll be back after these messages.
Arnold Schwarzenegger here with an important announcement. You may remember me from movies like The Terminator, but I would like to talk about one particular movie where I go to Mars. There is this mountain called Pyramid Mountain, and all this crazy alien shit goes on inside it. Do you think that's all science fiction? Think again, my friend. That's why you have to tune in to Pyramids on Mars UFO radio show on ArtistFirst.com. My friend Kevin Estrella, he is in a band called Pyramids on Mars. He has also been contacted by aliens. This guy has been a guest on over 15 UFO radio talk shows, so you have to listen to him. There's something going on, and it can't be ignored. He interviews people who have been abducted by aliens. He interviews alien-human hybrids. This is no bullshit. So get to the chopper! Do whatever you have to do and go listen. Get your ass to Mars. Pyramids on Mars. UFO Radio.
In Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, Arthur D. Schwartz presents an ethical theory that is a framework for evaluating moral conundrums that go beyond legalistic rulemaking, dogmatism, and preconditioned thinking. The book is as much an ethical framework for unconventional ideas as it is for staying with convention. Ethical Empowerment is a manifesto of non-doctrinaire perspective. Ultimately, the hypnotic thinking of ideology and dogmatism can only be overcome by returning to the true source and essence of morality, which is nothing less than universal love. Discover how the philosophically liberating approach of the ethical empowerment can be applied to the range of ethical, social, and political controversy. Read about a plan to eliminate all political parties. Entertain the possibility of an overhaul of the patent system and its replacement with a system that rewards inventors while eliminating monopolistic control of patents and technological suppression. Many other transformative ideas are discussed in the book, including issues related to the monetary system, real estate, scientific paradigms, and a rational approach to conspiracy theory. While ethical empowerment will challenge your mind to consider new perspectives, the ethical challenge is always to keep the diversity, depth, and breadth of perspective within the boundaries of love. Ethical Empowerment is available at Amazon.com and most online booksellers in both print and e-book editions.
This is Arthur D. Schwartz. You know, beliefs and disbeliefs can be very powerful. Much like philosophy, hypnotism is concerned with belief. Hypnotherapy, a practical application of hypnotism, may largely be described as the practice of removing false beliefs that form mental blocks to success, to happiness, and to well-being. In my hypnotherapy and philosophical counseling practice, I combine my work in philosophy with hypnotism in order to clear mental blockages that can occur on both conscious and subconscious levels. A mental block may be conscious or subconscious and can be expressed, for example, in the form of anxiety, low self-esteem or low motivation, bad habits, tobacco habits, weight gain, low performance, and much more. If you are interested in using hypnosis and the power of the mind to overcome mental blocks and barriers that have emerged in your life, please feel free to give me a call at 617-964-4800 or visit www.integralhypnosis.com. That's INTEGRAL hypnosis.com.
This is George Thorogood of the Destroyers, and you're listening to ArtistFirst Radio.
You are listening to Philosophic Perspectives on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your host, Arthur D. Schwartz.
Well, welcome back. So I'm having a lot of fun talking with Scott about all the great shows on ArtistFirst Radio. And obviously, we've talked, about two shows. How much more do we have, Scott? How much more time?
As long as you want.
Well, okay. Okay.
We're the last live show tonight, so you can take as much time as you like.
Oh, and I wanted to actually say, well, I was going to say it earlier when I forgot, but I wanted when the show started. This is a live broadcast. This show, tonight's show, will also be broadcast at the usual time of Philosophic Perspectives, which is the first and third Wednesdays of each month at 10 p.m. So next Wednesday is the third Wednesday, and this show will be broadcast at that time. The reason we did that, because I'm an open book, because I want to watch the third presidential debate, which is that night, and so we did it this way. So this is live if you're listening now, but if you're listening next Wednesday, which would be the 19th, I believe. The 19th. It will be pre-recorded. So I was just wondering, Scott, I want to go down. So there's a few. Before the show began, I kind of picked out a few shows. We've talked about Project Urantia, I think it's pronounced right.
Yes,
Pyramids on Mars, Kevin Estrella. That sounds great. I'm going to listen to some of his shows for sure. Of course, Tony's show, Authors First. Now, there's some other really, tell me about John Francis Peters. He has this interactive art show. And has he been with the network for a long time?
Yes, I think he's going on his third year with us. He's a painter.
He does. He had this interactive thing. So when he goes online, he shows the pictures online that you can watch. Is that the idea?
Yes. The first 20 minutes of every broadcast, we direct people to go to the website John Francis Peters Art, and there are different art rooms he has set up permanently. And then he'll pick a painting ahead of time, and we'll direct everyone to go there. And then, using the magnification on your screen, you can zoom in. I mean, it's great. I think the visual art world is way behind catching up with the technology. You don't have to go to a gallery to stare at a painting anymore. I mean, this is a way to open up. But John Francis Peter also has a history in the music business, believe it or not. He was in New York City trying to figure out how to make a living and bumped into a guy. And just as it turns out, they were just beginning to put out the American, Don McLean's American Pie record.
Wow.
And he got his feet wet in the business promoting that exact record, and he's part of why that record became so successful. So he's a fascinating...
one of the greatest records in rock and roll ever.
Interesting fella.
Yeah. That because I did a show and I tried that idea. It was the one I'm looking now. That was when was that? May 4th with Ken Perez, and but I was kind of clumsy. I mean, he writes, he draws, and he does sort of cartoons. And caricatures and stuff, and so I did some of that, but I just tried to scratch the surface. I didn't realize that this John Francis Peters has a show all about that, and I agree. It really does have a lot of possibility to have that interactivity on the radio, and it's almost. There's so much potential. I mean, even probably there's more potential than on a television show, because of the very nature of the television show. I think it has to move. There's motion involved. Whereas if you're a painter and when you want to display your artist on your, I don't know how great it would be on a smartphone, but if you have a laptop or a desktop. I think that it would even be more magnificent that way than watching it on the TV. Because TV, you don't just they just don't show you an image. It's always moving, right? Don't you agree? I mean, it's basically about action. Whereas, with this interactive show, I think you can probably, you can look at the picture as long as you want.
Well, there's bajillions of books about art. You sit there and flip through the pages. What's the difference on a screen? But on his show, he spends the first 20 minutes with one of his paintings every show. He's a monthly show. But then he spends the next 40 minutes with a guest. And he has because of his connections in the music business, he's had some monster guests on. He also does the same with authors, some great authors. So he doesn't spend the whole hour, but it's a nice combination. It's a great balance.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. Now, I'm a little bit familiar with the show because it precedes mine. End of Empire with Chris Bromwich. It sounds like he does a really nice job.
He is. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, he has a lot of connections in the music industry, right?
Yeah, he just became a Canadian citizen. He's born in England. He's British now. He's a dual citizenship. His daughter just graduated or is graduating from Harvard. He's very accomplished, and he's decided at this point in his life he's going to be gone back to recording music, but he's very opinionated, very educated, and if you listen to his shows are very topical, and he's got some great insights. I suppose there's people that'll love him and people that'll hate him, because if you disagree with his opinion, well, he's going to be,
Well, I think from what I heard, I think he's certainly anti-Trump. Is that right?
Yes, but yes, absolutely anti-Trump. But he's not all that peachy with Clinton either. He seems to be rather fair in his criticism on both candidates. Right. But those goddamn Canadians are anyway. Oh, was I talking out loud? I'm just kidding, folks. We love Canada. I'm just kidding.
Right. No, I really, So I got a few comments to follow. I really am a Hillary fan. I do feel that she screwed up a little bit. Definitely with the email situation. Yeah, she certainly has her flaws, but I believe she will be a very good president. Get my fingers crossed. I really believe she will be. But I believe she will win. Hopefully. Now, so Chris Bromwich has a great show. I mean, you go to the Artist First homepage, and God, you kind of redesigned the homepage. You have the shows broken up. One part is alphabetic, and then one is topically oriented, topically organized. So it's very easy to find the shows, whether by alphabetically or by topic. And that's on the ArtistFirst.com show pages. ArtistFirst, one word, .com. Those were the major shows I picked out. I mean, Africa Creates, I mentioned at the start of the show. That's really fascinating. She broadcasts direct from Africa, right? Live from Africa?
Well, she records them and sends. Yeah, she's obviously doing it live at the time. Vered Asani is her name. I believe she is either South African or Canadian, and she works in a governmental.
I think it's a Canadian.
It might be Canadian. I think it is. And she's a fascinating lady. She's an artist. She's an author, and she uses those passions to interview African, all kinds of stuff. All kinds of Kenyans and other African countries around, and it's all done basically around Nairobi, Kenya. Pretty cool.
Right. I just had this idea popped in my head. I mean, those are the major shows. I mean, there's someone. I think she's relatively new. Vicky Drain. Is it Vicky Drain? Is that no? I
yes, that's correct.
Drane.
Yep, just like the bathroom.
Okay, yeah. I thought my writing is so bad. Vicky Drain, and she's an author, and she promotes authors.
Yeah, she owns a PR firm that.
It's a PR firm. Yeah, I saw that. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to contact her, and so that's another interesting. There's so many shows. I probably missed a few that are pertinent, and a lot of music shows. I'm not a musician myself, or don't consider myself to be knowledgeable about music. I know that. I mean, music is such an important thing in life, but that's one of my many deficiencies. But of course, Artist First Radio does have a lot of music. You're a musician yourself, Scott, but there's many shows there that seem to be really interesting, and I think that everybody should, if you're listening, take a look at some of these shows and try it out. And all the shows have podcasts. The shows are Scott puts up a podcast after each show. And they're free downloads, and it's usually put up within 24 hours after the show. And so download away or listen live or stream it as well. Now, I have a group called the Creativity Expo, and I'm still figuring out ways to make that happen. But it's very apropos because what we just did this evening, looking at all these different individuals who are working in the arts and in writing and in art and music, and I would say they are independent artists, independent authors, independent artists in the broad sense of the term artists. Artist First Radio, of course, is artists in the broad sense, a lot of music, but also other forms, authorship and art. And so the Creativity Expo, in the broad sense of art, brings independent people in the Boston area, where I'm from, but there's no reason why it can't extend out. And, when I started talking about this John Francis Peters and his interactive art show, it made me think of maybe some way of doing something like that in conjunction with my Creativity Expo. You get the sense of what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So that we can interconnect various websites and have, let's say, one of the things I've done on this show, only one show so far, but I still intend to bring it back, is the radio roundtable. We did that one time, and I thought it went quite well. I'm not talking about the one in the coffee shop, but I did one, through our conferencing service, and So that is a way I think that I could bring people together and interactively having this conversation, and the folks listening can share looking at the art, or even if it's movies, or even if it's reading some pages from text of a book, all kinds of things. So that's really why I gravitated to John Francis Peters' art program, because it looks really interesting. I'm going to check it out. I want to also let everyone know my show again, Philosophic Perspectives, is on the first and third Wednesdays of each month at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, it's various shows, or all rotating shows, are rebroadcast, encore broadcasts on the first Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. and also on Friday nights at 8 p.m. So, is there anything you want to say, Scott?
Yeah, there is actually. I would like to remind everybody that ArtistFirst is always looking for interesting programming. It's not as easy to come by as you might think. But don't be intimidated, folks. If you think that you have an idea for a program, or maybe you already have a podcast that you're doing in your basement, and you'd like to reach 10 million people a month. Well, actually, we reach about 5.5 million on average. But contact us. We'd like to look at you and audition you, or try. Now, how did we come up with the 30 shows we do now? We have had close to 20,000 guests on our station since clear back in the 90s. And 90% of the programs that air on ArtistFirst were people who were guests on our program, like Arthur D. Schwartz. Arthur was a guest on Authors First. It gives us an hour to preview a potential show host, and it's very rare, it's extremely rare, that we will find somebody that we're impressed enough with to call them and say, hey, you're a pretty impressive guy. Perhaps you'd like to have a show on here. It's only, it's almost literally 1 in 1,000. So that's why, as you guys can hear, that's why we asked Arthur, as you guys listening to the program, he's a smart guy, he's an interesting guy, he's a fascinating guy, and it makes for good radio. So if you know anybody that might fit that bill, by all means, send them our direction.
Well, thank you very much for that plug, Scott. Send me the bill.
Okay.
So I think this concludes tonight's broadcast. I really enjoyed this. I think we'll do this again periodically. What do you say?
Oh, I'd love to. And the Chit Chat girls keep asking when you're going to come on.
Oh, well, they need to contact me. I'm available. Yeah, I think we spoke about that. And I'll have them on my show as well.
Yeah, they're kind of crazy, but that's going to be like oil and water there. So that usually makes for good radio.
Oil and water.
Well, you couldn't be more opposites than they are. I mean, they're wonderful, wonderful people. We love them. They're in their 7th year on our station. We love them. Former NFL cheerleaders that are now homemakers with kids in college. So that's the premise behind that.
Isn't that oil and water? Why not positive and negative? How about that? The two.
Yin and yang. Yeah, there you go.
Yin and yang. Well, this has been great. Okay, so this does conclude tonight's broadcast. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining me today. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy doing the show always, and so we'll do this again. So for links to my book, Ethical Empowerment, Virtue Beyond the Paradigms, my philosophical counseling and hypnotherapy practice, and the Social Philosophizers Club, please visit arthurdschwartz.com. And this is Arthur D. Schwartz reminding you to live well and think deeply. So until next time, good night, everybody.